Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Harry Sherrard. On behalf of the Talks team, very warm welcome to our talk this evening. Hopefully most of you are already Brooklands members. If you're not, our colleagues down at the back there can join you up. Or if you are members, of course, you can also buy some memorabilia down there. So without any further ado, please, I will welcome to the stage Ian Flux.
Well, that's a nice welcome. My God, there's a lot of you here as well. Got anything better to do on a Thursday?
Well, Fluxie, first of all, thanks very much for coming along. And although you're actually relatively local, but I think you said this is your first visit to the museum.
It is, yeah. And I'm actually going full circle tonight because in 1974, I was going to Brooklands Technical College in early February, just literally up the road from here, got expelled from there, and haven't been back since. But luckily in the audience tonight, I'm honoured that he's here, is Neil Trundle, who I was offered a job to go and sweep the floors, make the tees and drives the van at Token Racing, and the whole team consisted of Ray Jessup, the designer, Neil Trundle, Chris Lewis and myself. Just like the 600 people there is today doing the same job.
We'll come to all that in a second, Puxy. So let's just back up. So, like me, you're actually born on a farm, so I can actually recognise that's a Massey 35 you're sitting on there.
Yeah.
And you were telling me when we're having a meal there this evening that as a child you were taken to Goodwood on a particularly memorable day.
Yeah, I was. I think it was 5 or maybe 6 in 1962, and I was there in the grandstand with my dad and his brother when Sterling Moss had his massive crash. Can't remember anything about the racing at all, but what I do remember is when the commentator announced that Sterling had a massive shunt, that the whole place just went quiet and you could just like hear a pin drop, and that's the thing I remember of that meeting. Couldn't tell you what else went on, but the quietness of the grandstand.
Mm-hmm. So the advantage of living on a farm is you've got a bit of scope to do a bit of driving. So your father, I think, you got you going in this fairly.
Yeah, that was my 6th birthday.
And what you just ragged that round the farm or whatever?
Yeah, we had a 1.5 miles of tarmac through the farm, and so I just whizzed up and down there every day, endless times, and obviously I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And so the next step up then was to actually go into like racing. So that's the little cart on the right-hand side, which probably not many people are familiar with. Formula 6, I think it was
yeah,
called.
It was. It was a cheap version of karting and invented by GT racer at the time, Tom Barnard. And he just wanted an alternative, and I think he got the RAC on his side because it was all about safety and a load of old bollocks, but we all still raced. But I found this night before last, and it's just coincidental it is tomorrow, but this here is for first place, and it's the first race I ever went to and the first race I ever won at Tilbury Kart Circuit, and it's 55 years ago tomorrow. So, thank you.
Yeah, March the 28th, absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, and I think you actually not only won a race, but you also won a championship in the.
Yeah, I did the following year.
In the Formula 6, yeah. And so, unlike a lot of people, you didn't graduate up into Formula Ford. Then you went the Formula V route, which is the car on the left, then the Scarab.
Yeah. So out of Formula 6, it was run by the Rochester Motor Club, and there was a guy called Peter Ingram Monk, who was the clerk of the course at Brands and also did the Formula 6 races. And he suggested to my dad that Formula Ford in those days, they took all the money for your entries, and then you got one qualifying session, and if you weren't good enough, you went home because they only had one race, so 2 qualifying sessions. So if you were like 15th, you're all right. If you weren't 16th, you were going home. And he said Ian needs as much practice as possible, and Formula V hasn't got that sort of competitive edge and many people, so why don't you do Formula V? And also in those days, Volkswagen was still very keen on promoting it, so the prize money was a lot better for Formula V than it was in Formula Ford. For instance, in '75, when I was racing against Tiff and Jeff Lee's Formula Ford, they'd win 60 quid against a lot of serious people, and I'd win 200 quid against not serious people. So it made sense to go and do it.
So yeah, so it'll crop up several times as we go through it, Fluxie, but you have this kind of parallel careers that you were doing your own driving, but you were also working as a mechanic and in garages for other people. Well, I think
mechanic, as Neil's here, is a bit of an optimistic word. Well, I think I was very good at putting fueling and I was quite good at loading the truck as well.
So you've alluded to already that one of the garages you were working on, they wanted you to, as it were, better yourself, and they sent you along to Brooklands College, but that didn't go too well. And another little bit of Fluxie memorabilia. Here's his letter kicking him out of Brooklands College, 4th of February 1974.
And I actually started work with Neil on March the 1st, 1974, at Token Racing.
Yeah. So just tell us about Token. What was that then?
So let me get this right. It should have been a Rondell Formula car, which was Neil and Ron Dennis. Sadly, Rondell went bust, and out of the ashes, the car was almost finished. Tony Vasopulo and Ken Grob got involved, and so the car became Token because of T.O. for Tony and K.E.N. for Ken. And Ray was still on board. Neil was obviously part of Rondell Racing, and they wanted him there. Chris was a mechanic at Rondell, and we had this workshop that was about the size of the bar in there. Our stores area was half a semi-detached house, and my job when I first started there, all the stuff had come over from Feltham, from Rondell Racing, and was just sort of all slung in boxes, and I spent about 3 weeks trying to make it into some sort of semblance of stores.
And what series, was it like full Grand Prix that Token were taking place in?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And our first race was the Daily Express meeting at Silverstone. Mm-hmm. We were meant to go testing on the Monday at Goodwood, and we didn't because the car wasn't finished. And then we worked a couple of all-nighters, and then we got to Silverstone, and the first time the car ever turned the wheel was in the first free practice session. And it was, you can always tell the pictures of the Token when it was taken, because we actually did the first practice session, well, Tom Price did, and we didn't have time to fit the front wings. And so if you see a car without any wings, you know that was the first ever practice session.
So from Token and Neil Trundle, maybe we'll hear from Neil later on that era, you then went on to the Graham Hill Formula One team. So
and once again, that's absolutely thanks to Neil. So after Tom Price sadly left us, because we went testing at Goodwood after Tom had won Monaco at Formula 3, and we'd been there about a couple of hours, I suppose, and about 11 o'clock, half 11, firstly, a UOP Shadow helicopter arrived, and about 20 minutes later, a Hesketh helicopter arrived, both in search of Tom's services. So Tom went off and had his meetings and came back after lunch and said, well, thank you, boys, appreciate what you've done, but I've just signed for UOP Shadow. So that was really the end of the team at that point. And we did one more race with David Purley at the British Grand Prix, worked most of the night, and we were first reserve. Peter Gethin broke down on the warming up lap in the hill, and we thought, oh, good, we're in with a shot. And sadly, he broke down just behind the pitch, ran back and jumped in the T-car, so that was our race plan. And then Neil left, I think, and went to Tyrrell's, and we got Ian Ashley on board with some Shell money and his mates from school, Richard Oaten. And we did Austria, Nürburgring and Austria, and I did it with Wingnut, who I'm still friends with to this day. So we didn't have Chris Lewis or Neil, it was just me, Wingnut and Ray. And when we came back from that, that was the end of the team. Neil found out that it was all closing and kindly rang Graham Hill for me and said, I've got a young lad who's prepared to work reasonably hard. And I started at Graham Hill's on September the 1st. And I think
without even an interview, I think they just Neil's word was enough.
Yeah.
So of course, Graham's son Damon Hill is our president here, so a big connection with the Hill family, obviously. And did you impress Graham Hill there, or did he impress you?
Well, I tried to impress him. We had an automatic, Graham was sponsored by Ford, so we had a transit van automatic thing, and I had to go and pick Graham up from his solicitors in Soho and take him to Gatwick, and it was a damp day, and I'd just done 3 Formula V races on the trot, coming second in each one, so I thought this is my opportunity to impress him. And I was sliding this transit around, and Graham was waving out the window, and I thought he was waving to people, but he was like waving to apologise. Anyway, I dropped him off at Gatwick and got back to the workshop, and as I walked in, the boy said, "Oh, you're in the shit." I said, "Well," he said, "Oh, Ray Brimble, the team manager, wants to see you right now." So I go up there, and Ray's going, "Oh." He said, I've had Graham on the phone, and he never wants to see you again." Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a shame. And he said, "But relax," because he could see I was upset. And he said, "I've had a good word with him and told him that the hours you do where you'll drive in the middle of the night and whatever you'll do." And he said, "Well, he's got one last chance, but the agreement is he's never, ever going to sit with you as a passenger again." Thank God I wasn't a passenger on his plane.
Yeah, of course, that all ended tragically. So that's your mechanicking and working in teams from that era. So back to your own driving and your own racing. So you then did graduate from the Formula V up to Formula 3 then in a Rolt.
Oh yeah, Monaco.
Yeah, made it to the Monaco. How was that?
Lovely.
Great circuit.
Yeah, when you're 20 years old.
Yeah, but I mean, you were in a pretty tough era of Formula 3. I mean, you had Derek Warwick, PK, all those guys
Bruno
up against.
Giacomelli, Bruno won that year, 76.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Still friends with him to this day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good. It was lovely. It came about through my mum. Mum and Dad had a plant hire company, and they sponsored me in Formula V in 1974, and then said they couldn't afford 75. And Shell came up with 500 quid that I'd met through Token with Ian Ashley. And I said, "Well, I've got 500 quid, and I think we needed 1,500 quid. And Mum said, "Right, well, as you've got this money, I'll have a word with our best supplier, which was Ockley Construction, and see." And they were building Bracknell Newtown in those days. So they had about 80% of Mum's and Dad's plant hire equipment all there. And Mum spoke to the boss, Ken Grumby, and she said, I jumped the figure up a bit, and she said, "Oh, Ian needs £2,000, just so he could come down, because you can always come down, you can't go up." And he said, £2,000's fine. And won the championship with them, and at the end of the year they said, "Well, we'll do 2 years of F3 with you properly." So 25 grand in 76 and 30 grand in 77, which was a good budget.
And I think from reading your book, the first year went well, but the second year, maybe not quite so well.
No, I managed to cock it up. I think I had a crash at Thruxton, came back far too quickly, and went to Monaco. I had a good result in Monaco the year before, and having not kept up, I hadn't driven for basically 4 weeks the time I got to Monaco, and it was all right in the wet, and when it dried out, I didn't qualify, so it was all a bit of an embarrassment.
So a big career moment came at the end of 1977 when you were potentially going to be interviewed for the Unipart Formula 3 drive, but some bloke from Birmingham beat you to it?
Well, I try and blame Nigel Mansell, but it wasn't Nigel's fault at all. It was all my own doing. Actually, it was the end of 78, the beginning of 79
okay.
that happened. We managed to scrape through 78 on next to nothing, with me doing some extracurricular activities to earn some money.
And so, anyway, Nigel got the drive anyway, and
yeah, but I did all right. We went to see Dave Price. Nigel and I were both there at the same time, and anyway, the two directors of Unipart, we were Dave sitting in doing the interviews. Anyway, they called Nigel back in first, and he came out all smiles, so I sort of knew the answer. And Dave said to me, "Don't worry, Fluxie, I've got you a job." And I was thinking, well, I thought we were only after one job. And he said, "No, we're running Giacomo Agostini in British Formula 1, Aurora Formula 1, and you can work with Ian Dyer and be Ago's mechanic," which I took up, enjoyed working with Dyer. And Ago was a lovely, lovely man.
Yeah, I think he's racing. And just maybe you want to explain what that series was, because maybe people don't know what the Aurora series was.
Well, in those days, other than Ferrari, every car had a DFV in it, and most of them were in England. The factories were tiny in those days, as I just told you about Token. And last year's car, was just a nuisance in the corner and taking up precious space. So you could basically buy maybe not a year-old car, but definitely a 2-year-old car with a DFE in it for about 50 grand and do the Aurora series. So the Formula One teams were glad to clear the workshop space and have a few quid. Then you could race those cars relatively cheaply.
Yeah, so the series for the previous years or several-year-old Formula One cars.
And it was a great series. A lot of good people raced in them in those years, 78, 79, 80, 81.
And you say in the book that Agostini would cook for the team?
Yeah. Well, we found out later it's a tradition in MotoGP that the riders aren't superstars like they pretend to be in F1. And he was more than happy because he'd always cooked for the team, whatever. With MV Augusta, he always cooked lunch. So he carried that on with us, with the Williams and Dave Price. I think we're about the fourth race was Donington, and we tested on the Thursday, had the Friday off, and then qualifying race Saturday, Sunday. So after Thursday, we're having dinner with Ago that night. And he said, "Oh, what would you boys like for lunch tomorrow?" And I jokingly said, "Well, anything other than pasta, because we've having pasta up to here." And he said, "Well, what do you want then?" And I jokingly said, "Oh, avocado and king prawns would be nice." I didn't think any more of it. And Ago always had an attractive woman with him and didn't need to get out of bed that early. When we came down to breakfast that morning, Ago's 1.3 Marina Works car had gone missing. Wasn't in the car park. I was like, "That's strange. Why is he up so early?" Anyway, it wasn't at the track. Didn't see him all morning. Then about 12:30, 1:45, he turned up, big smile on his face. He'd driven from Donington to Harrods to buy the king prawns and avocado and driven back again. And that's a 7 times world 500cc champion. Yeah, that's how nice a bloke he was.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Oh, just while we're on Goodwood. So in 2004, I'm racing Harry Leventis' 330 LMB Ferrari with Peter Hardman for the RAC Tourist Trophy. And I knew Ago was there, so I thought I'd go and find him. So he said, "Oh, Fluxie, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm racing this Ferrari." "Oh, show me. So took him over, and Harry, by chance, happened to be there. So I said to Ago, "Oh, this is Harry Leventis, who owns the car, Giacomo Agostini. Oh, pleased to meet you." And Ago said to Harry, "Well, you let this great drive your car." "Oh, that's handy."
So back on track then, and following your own career then, and we saw it in the video. I think some people saw it running when you were racing at Mondello Park. You then hooked up with Dr. Joseph Ehrlich. Tell us about him. Who was he?
Well, he was an inventor, and he was Doctor of Engineering, and his claim to fame in, I think, the late 50s. He Yamaha power valve. I don't know if people have heard of that, but it's on the disc rotor thing on a 2-stroke. He actually invented that and patented it, luckily. Anyway, he showed me a cheque from Yamaha in 1964 for £128,000 as his payout for them copying his patent on the power valve. Doc loved racing. He had Mike Elwood win for him on his own EMC bike on Monza Grand Prix in 1961, and was really love of bikes, but then he came to cars. And he was a lovely man. He gave a lot of us the opportunity to race for free or even be paid a bit for him. So Brett Riley, David Leslie, Pierre Dodonne, myself, Bryce Wilson, all got to thank Doc for being able to, well, he restarted my career. I hadn't raced all of 79 until I replaced Mansell for the last 2 races after he broke his back. Alton was Dieter Zaris, and I did badly, Silverstone, Thruxton and Silverstone. And then Brett Riley said to me, who was Mansell's teammate, but we're running out the same workshop as Agostini. He said, oh, you ought to give Dr. Ehrlich a ring. He's racing in New Zealand this winter and looking for a driver for his Atlantic car. So I rang Doc up and went up for an interview, and he said, oh, well, OK, we'll see how it goes. We'll come and test at Mallory next week. And the car was really good, but the engine was a bit rubbish. But he was happy, and he said, right, come to New Zealand. And luckily that restarted my career after I thought it was going to grind to a halt at that point.
And again, the episode in the book, we had an unexpected free accommodation one night in New Zealand. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'd finished third at Wigram, and Doc was over the moon, and everybody, all the Kiwis were right up for us because they knew we didn't have a top car, and to finish third was a good effort. So obviously, as you know, I like celebrating. And went to bed relatively pissed. And in the lift, we were in this tower block type hotel in Christchurch. And going up in the lift was Dick Bennett, who I'm sure you all know, Dave Oxton, who Dick ran over there, and two of their mechanics, and me in the lift. Anyway, they were whispering away. Anyway, we got out of the lift, and they held me down on the floor. And there was an ice machine and covered me in ice. So and then left me there, and I thought, oh, bastards, I'll get them back. So I've done it before in England, so I lit up a fag and just stuck it in the sprinklers. Gave it about 20 seconds worth, so took my fag out, and they didn't go out. They normally go out in England. Little did I know at that point, it wasn't just that floor, it was the whole hotel. And on the top two floors, Romeo and Juliet, Mark Knopfler. They were playing live in Christchurch that night, and them and the band had the top two floors. Then there was about 3 floors of racing people, and then the bottom 2 floors were pensioners on coach trips. And anyway, the alarm's going, and obviously my room's absolutely soaked, so I know now I'm going to be in a bit of trouble. Anyway, the old Bill came and arrested me because everybody's in the car park other than me, and I'm like hiding in my room. And they're doing a roll check. So came to them and took me off to the Christchurch cells, and it was a big open cell, very old-fashioned. And then there was about 6 Hells Angel biker types. This is going to have to go back to my school days here. And when I explained what I'd done and flooded the hotel, oh, mate, yeah, have a cigarette. Anyway, the cameras followed me in and out. I had to go to court twice, once in the morning, then after lunch to get the charge and everything. And I got more coverage. The cameras followed me doing that. The cameras didn't even come to the race at Wigram, so in the end I did get a bit more coverage out of it. Apparently it's still talked about in New Zealand now.
I'm sure it is. So we both knew Eddie Jordan quite well, and you got to know Eddie quite early in your career. How did you first meet Eddie?
I knew of Eddie, but the first time we really became friends, I won the Atlantic race in Mondello, in the one you've just been watching.
Just the year before, I think.
In 1980.
Yeah.
And Eddie and Marie were parked next to us with a Mini Traveller. And Eddie said, oh, you'll be going back to England? I said, yeah. He said, would you do us a favour? We're just starting the team and we need a few sheets and pillowcases delivering. And as you can see, we've only got this Mini Traveller, so we can't get many in there. And you've got all that expense above the car and the truck. Can we fill all that up with sheets? I said, yeah, not thinking. Anyway, 6 trips later with the Mini Traveller, we've only just about got room for the car. He's absolutely filled the... and I'm not sure if there was any import duty on cotton from Ireland to England then. But anyway, we got them all to Silverstone for him, and that really became the start of our friendship. And so God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Top man missing.
Yeah. Very, very sad to lose Eddie last week, for sure. But I don't think this one is in the book, but there's lots of stories that you think are in the book, and sometimes they aren't. And this one isn't in the book, but I think you helped them out with a bit of intelligence, bit of information at one point.
Yes, I did. So this is 2001, and I'm doing World Sports Cars, and we're testing at Barcelona on Monday and Tuesday, and then McLaren have got it Wednesday and Thursday for Coulthard. Anyway... Tuesday lunchtime, the McLaren truck rolls in, and Ian Dyer, who's a good mate, and Neil Trundle, and I think Ian was in charge of the test team. And so he comes and phones me, and I didn't know he was going to be there. He said, oh, we must go out on Tuesday night, which we duly did. But anyway, he said, come down and look at the car. So at that point, the gearbox and rear end is off the car. So the V10 engine in those days. And I noticed on the primaries of the exhaust, in the middle exhaust, there's butterflies, a butterfly on each side. So I thought, oh, that's obviously not meant to be there. And then they put that on, and then they were warming the car up, and I noticed the inlet trumpets are going up and down as they rev the engine, extending the... Anyway, so I ring Eddie up when I get back, and said, oh, I've got some news for you. I want a few quid out of it. I said, can you... I think they were running Peugeot engines then. I'm not 100% sure on that, but anyway, so I said, get the car all together and just split the gearbox off and I'll come and tell you. And I said, it's important, you're going to pay me. Yeah, we'll pay. And so said to Eddie, oh, where's the butterflies in those two exhausts? What do you mean? I said, well, McLaren have got two butterflies. Mm-hmm. And I said, right, put that on, fire it up. And I said, oh, your trumpets don't move. He said, how much do you want? And I thought £7,000 sounded fair. So he said, I know you brought an invoice with you because I'd done deals with him before. Went out to the car, got the invoice, gave me a cheque for £7,000 plus VAT.
Very, very nice. Useful little bit of intelligence. Yeah. But again, you encountered Eddie in a not so comfortable way one time when you were working as a mechanic at Le Mans. In fact, I think he nearly wiped you out. Yeah, so I went down with the Ibec in 1981, and Tony Trimmer and Tiff were driving the Ibec, which was really the ex-Hesketh sports car, but then it all went tits up and it became the Ibec because Ian Bracey's family involvement, and their company was Ibec Insurance, hence the Ibec. Anyway, we had a load of problems in the race, and Eddie was behind us in the next pit, and I think he was on an Aston Martin something or other, MK. And I'm under the car on the quick lift, and with my legs hanging out the back, and Eddie steamed into the pits to change drivers, left his braking far too late, and all I could see on my side was this locked up wheel, and literally he stopped that far from my feet. And I mean, obviously it's not that close, but when I thought, oh my God, this is all I need. So you mentioned Tiff Nudella, who's a friend of Brooklands, and he's a local lad, you know. Tiff was born in brought up in Weybridge. Literally, as we drove past his mum and dad's house coming here, I've messaged him tonight to say, just past your mum and dad's house, happy memories there, coming to talk in here tonight. Yeah, so he was, yes, he's been to Brooklands as well, so you shared a lot of stuff with him over the years, and he obviously was your best man at your wedding then? Yeah, which was a shame. Wish I'd never had the wedding. So there was a big moment then, I think, in 1986 when, well, particularly a very big moment in your career when you actually had a Formula 3000 drive, but only for an hour. Yes, yeah. What happened there? I'm not sure if it was 85. Yeah, it was 86. 86. Yeah, it was. So there was a Thundersports support race supporting the British Grand Prix at Brands in 86. So this is on the screen now, the Thundersports car. And Gil Baird, who owned Tech Speed, was and I raced against his team in Sports 2000. And they were going to do British Formula 3000 the following year, a bit like Aurora was in the late 70s. It's going to be British Formula 3000. Anyway, I was obviously very happy to be on the front row for the British Grand Prix. And then even happier when Gil said he'd like to employ me to race his 3000 car. No money, but I get half the prize money, so that's all good. And Marvin Humphreys, who's still around to this day, was the team manager. Anyway, about an hour after I just got this deal, I was proper pissed. And it was a hot summer's evening. And I fell into the Kentigan because it was a summer evening, the doors were open. I tripped over the step, not seeing it, and fell at Marvin Humphreys' feet. And he said, well, that's that gone then, isn't it? And it was. So yeah, so only for an hour you had that drive. I think that's breaking some.
I told a lot of people in an hour.
Exactly. So the next branch out of racing then was a bit of touring cars, and you raced those Sierra RS 500s. They were pretty hairy car.
Lovely car. Yeah, it's a real. You had to appreciate what you were dealing with, and I feel my good friend Carl Jones, the first one I ever did race with was Carl, I don't know if you remember, Carl was in the Duckham's sponsored RS 500.
Yeah,
and that was the first one I experienced, so I didn't know anything about them, so I just assumed that's how they go. But this car here was an Andy Rouse car, and honestly it was like chalk and cheese. And what Carl then had achieved in 88 and 89, which was basically a rally car, whereas these were proper race cars. Now, hats off to Carl with what he achieved, because it wasn't until I got in a Andy Rouse car you knew that they were very special.
Yeah, he's a top preparer, wasn't he, Andy Rouse, in his day? Yeah, for sure. So round about this time, then you became an instructor as well, motor racing instructor.
Yeah, I started out in '86.
Yeah, and I was also instructing at the same time, and our paths actually crossed at Silverstone. I think 1991. Yeah,
it was the first year of the Fleet show.
The Fleet show at Silverstone.
Pissing with rain for 2 days, wasn't it? And the paddocks, everybody got the customers had to be tracted out the paddocks because they were parking on the grass.
So I was working for Peter Gathin at Goodwood as an instructor, and we had the contract for Honda, so we were up there demonstrating the Hondas, but you were the head honcho. You were going around keeping us all in line.
Yeah, I can't believe it, but I was actually officially in a police car, not in the back. I was actually driving it.
So exactly. So I did some alleged driving misdemeanor, and you then pulled me over.
Yeah, the great thing about this police car, I think it was half a genuine one from Rover, but it had a loud hailer thing on the front, yes. So you could go, with the white Nissan, please pull over. It was great.
Exactly. I don't think I did anything wrong. I think you were just playing with a police car.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I probably had somebody in the passenger seat. I'd go, let's pull him over. Well, you in the white Honda, get over.
Yeah. No, it was good fun. So another highlight of your career then was, of course, the famous XJR 15s.
It was. Financially, it was anyway.
So how much you paid to the rest of those then?
I got 10 grand a race. There was only 3 races, Monaco, Silverstone and Spa. And I was driving for a Japanese team called The Room, like on my overalls. Anyway, they sent this chap up about a week. I'd done the test at Silverstone. About a week before Monaco, Japanese bloke said he was coming up. And he turned up with a dustbin bag with 30 grand in it, but it wasn't 30 grand pound notes, it was 30 grand yen. And there was 250 yen to the pound in those days. It took me and Jane about 3 hours to count it all. But I didn't, obviously, you don't want to put money in the bank and tell the bank and the tax man you're getting all this. So we had an extension put on the house, and it was 7 grand to put this extension on in 91. And I said to the builder, right, we accept 7 grand, but I'm going to pay you 9. And he said, oh, and he said, well, and I said, well, there is a bit of a catch to it. I said, I'm giving you 9 grand in yen, and it's up to you to go and cash it in. Anyway, he took the yen, and we've been friends since.
You did very well, particularly the Silverstone race. I mean, you had a good chance of winning the Silverstone race.
Well, I did lead the wrong 17 of 20 laps.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
It was nice leading for 17 laps and ended up finishing 3rd. But I was the only Brit on the podium. And Mansell had just won the Grand Prix the race before, so there was still a lot of English supporters around. And it was won by Fangio's nephew,
Fangio 2 or something, yeah.
And Bob Wallach was second, who raced for Rondell. And so I was the first Englishman, and it was like I'd won, honestly, Fluxie, fucking great, loved it. Great
moment. And of course, worth mentioning what the prize money was for winning the series.
Well, it was $1 million, and Coroiser and Armin Hahn split it, because a Wilkinshaw car was meant to win, so he didn't have to pay the money out. But Armin Hahn and Coroiser both drove for independence, like I was. And they knew Wyn Percy probably had a better engine than they had.
He was in the Wilkinshaw car, yeah.
And the difference of this race was the checkered flag could come out any time between lap 15 and lap 20. Tom's rules, it's Tom's pitch, you go by Tom's rules. So we all accepted this, but what we didn't realise was that the moment Wyn came out of La Source, coming down the hill, and he was in the lead, the flag was going to go out. Anyway, Armin and Core decided that they'd basically block Wyn for the whole race, which they duly did. And Armin won, Core was second, and they had 500,000 dollars each.
Very nice.
Much to Tom's annoyance.
Absolutely, I would say he wasn't too pleased at that outcome. No.
But sorry, can I just on that? This is a nice racing story. So, in June last year, this very car, number 16, I hadn't sat in since I got out at Spa in 1991. Anyway, Don Law, who prepares Jags, he's got quite a few of these XJR 15s, and he found my car, and he got the guy who owned it to bring it up to his workshop, and they spent 3 months at a gentle pace going through it to make sure it was all good, and brought it to Silverstone. I then met the owner, Robin, for the first time at Silverstone, had Lucy with me, and reminiscing, and we had a half-an-hour session just for XJR 15s. I think there was 10 or 11 of us. But Armin was there, David Bradburn was there, and I was there, so they had a first, second and third, because Armin won at Spa, David was second at Monaco, and I was third at Silverstone.
Nice.
So all that was nice. Anyway, the big difference between when I drove it and when it was at Silverstone, there was a passenger seat in it, which wasn't before. So I said to Don Law, well, this is a track day, we can take passengers. He said, yeah. So I said to Robin, who bought it, would you like to come round with me? And Robin's 75 years old, a farmer from Reigate. Anyway, so I said to him, how did you buy the car? And he said, I got a bit pissed at Goodwood auction in 2001, and it went through the auction. And I said, what did you pay for it? He said, 85 grand. Well, these cars were 500 grand new in 91. Anyway, Robin had owned this car since 2001. It had just been stored in his barn until it went up to Don Law's for all those years. Ironically, these two cars are together. So this was Tiff's car, and my friend Sean Walker bought that about 4 years ago, and he paid 350 grand for it. And he had it 18 months and sold it for 1.4 million. So I told Robin that he's made a very shrewd investment, because Tiff had shunted at Spa that car really badly. My car was unmarked. And I said, he sold that one for 1.4 million. Yeah, yours has got to be around that. So more. You lashed out 85 grand. I've probably spent 30 or 40 grand with Don Law making it nice and getting it there and back. And he had his daughter and grandson with him, and their mouths dropped like, Grandad, yeah, wow, 85 grand and it's worth over $1 million. It was just lovely to see something nice out of motorsport.
Yeah. And did he actually sell it, or did he keep it?
No, I don't. No, we're meant to go for tea, but we haven't been yet.
So from one extreme to the other, you then were persuaded to do a race in a 2CV. You met the level 42 band. Yeah. So
Mike Lindup came to Donington for a shootout race or something with Tuscans or touring cars, and we got on really well. And he said, I'm going to be racing a 2CV, and there's a 2-driver race at Pembury. Would you come and do it with me? And I said, yeah, as long as you pay me, all right, which you did. And we came third. So it was like touring car one weekend, 2CV the following weekend, and Pro Sport 3000 the following weekend. Yeah, talk about varied things you do for money. Mm-hmm. As I dropped to my knees.
So you're obviously a great exponent. One of your greatest episodes in your career was obviously your TVR Tuscans, and that was a fantastic series, and you were very, very, very successful in that.
Well, it's something I'm most proud of. It's the best championship I've ever done in my whole life, touring cars, Formula 3, but how competitive the whole field is, and it's so nice to see Bobby Verdenroe in here tonight, who beat me in the championship in '97, but helped me a lot in '96 because he became my teammate halfway through the year. So Bobby knew he couldn't win the championship that year, but he was a great wingman and helped me win the championship convincingly. And the thing I'm most proud of, the championship ran from '89 to 2004 as a proper TVR championship. And I'm the guy who's won the most races. I've won 26 of the races. The next best is Steve Guglielmi and Lee Caroline, and they won 24 each. And then you drop down to Bobby somewhere down the bottom. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic series, and I think Trevor Wheeler himself was involved in.
Oh, yeah. If it wasn't for Peter Wheeler, it wouldn't have existed. His passion was the Tuscans. It was nice the road cars were doing well, but Peter made sure we all had the barbecues, all stayed in the same hotels. Everybody had equal amount to drink the night before qualifying, so you know you'd actually qualify. You were on pole with 8 pints in you. You weren't bad.
So it was a bit of a golden episode, or golden era for you, really, in your motor racing, because you then also got to drive that same season in British GT in this pretty amazing McLaren F1 GTR.
Yeah, it was a privilege to drive it. I wish I'd only had a bit of a better deal on what it's now worth. Jake bought it for 400 grand off Ray Belm at the end of '95, or beginning of '96. Used it for '96 and we won the championship. And then Jake put it in mothballs from the end of '96 to 2013, and Paul Lanzanti looked after it and they converted it to a road car because you only needed to put a handbrake and change the tyres on it. And so Paul took it for an MOT every year, and Jake then decided at the end of June 2013 he sold it for $8.5 million to Aaron So. Aaron So kept it a couple of years and sold it for 17. And then Lucy and I got invited down 2 years ago to Petersfield, and this South African guy in his 40s had just bought it. He said, could I bring down some cups and overalls and helmet and take some pictures from the 90s? And I sat in the car. I said, can I start it up? Yep. Vroom, vroom, vroom in his workshop. Tears in my eyes. And he just paid 22 million for it. So from 400 grand to 22 million. Even my house hasn't gone up that much.
So instead of being paid, you should have asked for a share.
Yeah, I should have asked for 1%.
Yeah, 1%.
I was getting £1,000 a day. I was happy with that.
So how did you do the two series in the one season? Were there not clashes?
Yeah, so I missed, because the McLaren obviously took priority at £1,000 a day. So I missed Mallory Park and Knock Hill in the Tuscan Championship. But I won the first round at Silverstone, then missed two, and then came back and did the rest.
And that was enough to do the double, and you were somewhat honoured by Autosport.
Yeah, I was.
Did the double page spread on your...
Yeah, well, that was a very great day, because I'm obviously best day of my life probably, but it started even better because October the 13th is the day that we got up early to watch Damon become world champion from Japan, then jumped in the car, went to Silverstone, won the GT Championship first and the Tuscan Championship 2 hours later.
At the same circuit?
Yeah, same day, same afternoon.
Fantastic, yeah.
So October the 13th has always been a day to remember. They don't get repeated.
So you're obviously on that day celebrating. So one of the most interesting things you did, and one of my favourite chapters in the book, is when you got the job as the Motorsport News, well, Motoring News, it was known as then, as the tester. Yeah, and that was incredible. The cars that you drove.
I was privileged. I've had a lucky life, but landing that job, I've sat next to 6 rally world champions. Obviously, I haven't driven them, but I have had the privilege of sitting with Hannah Mikkola, Colin McRae, Richard Burns, Didier Auriol, Pentia Ricola. The list goes on. Sorry. Yeah, Mark Duez.
I mean, there's some incredible cars you drove in that era. But there was one particular story when you were testing the Toyota rally car in France.
Yeah.
On a clear test track, but it turned out not to be quite so clear.
So Michelin had hired this stage basically through a load of farms down in the south of France, and it was about 10 k's, so it was quite steep going up, quite the opposite way coming down. And I had about 8 runs in the car, and Mark Duez was the works driver that day, and I was getting reasonably close to him going up the hill, but I seemed to lose seconds on him coming down the hill somehow. Anyway, we had one more run left to do, and Malcolm Griffiths was the photographer for the day, and he had to do some in-car shots. So going up, he was squatted in the passenger footwell, taking shots, and I was driving dead sensibly, and I said, right, coming down, I said, right, put the camera in the back somewhere. We're going to have a proper go at this, because I need to be a bit closer. Anyway, so they had radio-controlled about 10 or 11 people up each kilometre to make sure it was clear, because farmers had to get back to their properties and everything. So sitting on the line, and you could hear, OK, clear, OK, clear, OK, clear. So mate goes, right, go, and off we go. And we're coming through this long right-hander, about fourth gear, 70, 80 miles an hour. And I knew it was pretty much flat. And you've got rocks on your right, dropping on your left. And all of a sudden, right in front of me, is a Renault 4 van. So I have to make an instant decision here. So I chose the rocks. And the van went over the cliff. So we stopped, got out, Bob's gone green, run back, and like, we've killed. He can't. And looked over the side, and it had gone over the edge, and literally there was enough room for a Renault van to land on its wheels, like 10 foot down, like, oh my, sigh of relief. Yeah, Bob's never forgotten that either.
I'm sure. But yeah, apart from the rally cars, you ended up, you did make it to F1 in the end. I mean, you drove, I'm looking at the cars you drove, the JPS, Lotus, Williams, the Benetton, and then an incredible opportunity to drive like a Michael Schumacher era Ferrari then at Donington.
Yes, the reason I got this opportunity, I've been friends with the guy who owns it. He's got this 2004 Schumacher Ferrari, and Martin Brundle has got the lunchtime with Sky to do a piece on it. Anyway, I'm there working for Radical for the day, and we watched Brundle go round a bit and then go and have some lunch, and I start doing what I've got to do with customers in the afternoon, and all of a sudden Paul appears in the Radical pits and goes, do you want a shot in the car? I went, you're taking the piss. He said, Fluxie, I haven't come out all this way to try and find you if I was just going to come and wind you up. I said, no. But he said, the deal is you get 10 laps, but you've got to fit in Brundle's seat. We're not mucking about, so we'll adjust the belts, but that's as far as it goes. Well, having driven for Walkinshaw for a few test things over the years, you know that nobody's going to adjust the seat for you. If you're that tall or that tall, you're going to fit in a Walkinshaw car. So I thought, well, that's not a problem. I can do that. I had to take the lap straps in a little bit, inch off feet side. And that was it. I just thought I'd get that in, Martin. Obviously, they had to extend the crutch straps. Anyway, so I fired it up, and Paul was standing in front of me, and he goes, sorry, turn it off. And he said, Fluxie, I know you can't afford to crash it, so don't crash it. And off you go. Anyway, Brundle had done something like a 53, because I went to ask the mechanics, 53.8 or something. Anyway, immediately the car felt so much better than any F1 I'd been lucky enough to drive at that point. And second lap, absolutely flat in sixth, all through Craner curves, touched the brakes through, and it was, you could drive within 2 inches effortlessly. Mm-hmm. And you think, well, maybe I'm not going fast enough. But the second or third time I came up to the chicane, and I thought I was getting used to it, we're on the short circuit at Donington. I thought, oh, I better brake now. It seemed like miles closer than I would have done in the Tuscan or McLaren. And then I had to drive up to the corner because the brakes are good.
Yeah. break way too early, yeah.
Anyway, I did a 54.1 on my 9th lap, 8th lap. So as I came past the start, I said 54.1, and I hadn't made any effort at that.
What had Brundle done?
53.8 or something.
Oh,
sorry, 52.8, 52.8.
A couple of seconds off him there.
Yeah, well under. And with no effort. So I came in, and Paul said, why have you come in? You had another lap to do. I said, bearing in mind what you said before I went out, I could do that time with no effort, and if I needed to make a bit more effort and I didn't want to put the car at risk, he said, well done, old chap, that's not too bad.
So one of the most emotional moments of driving an F1 car must have come with a car that you presumably had worked on many decades previously,
much so.
the Embassy Hill car. So how did that one come about?
Through Motor News, but this was for Motorsport, the Green magazine.
Right.
I think it was 2004 and 5, but it was 30 years since the crash.
Right.
And that's what they wanted to... so it was for the November issue. And as you're all aware, it's 50 years this November since the crash. Mm-hmm. And they said, would you come down... a Swiss man owned the car. Mm-hmm. Would you come down to Dijon and have a few laps in it? Mm-hmm. And as you said, it was... you don't remember how much is in the back of your head of stuff that you stored with unknowingly, but it was very emotional driving it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic car. And you mentioned the revival earlier on. Obviously, a lot of Brooklands members would be big enthusiasts for the revival and that. So, what have you raced in the revival?
I've only done it twice because I'm not very light at Goodwood. Apparently, all starts from I did the first ever revival with Tony Dron in Harry Leventis's Ferrari GTO, and I didn't know, but apparently we were meant to go and buy some old shitty looking overalls to be part of it. Well, I had my FAI overalls that I was being paid to wear, so I wore them, and apparently that put everybody's nose out of place. That and I've never paid for overalls in my life. I wasn't about to start doing it at that age.
So you then did some good work for the sport. You then became involved with the BRDC, and you became a judge of the young drivers. And one chap who you gave the Young Driver of the Year award went on to do quite well, really. Well,
the Rising Stars was in the BRDC. Rising Stars was invented by Dave Brodie, sadly no longer with us, and Howden Gandy. And basically, they realised in 2000 that there was more members getting of an age and falling off the perch than there was coming into the club. So the club should run on its own funding. So this is the clubhouse, the club staff, not Silverstone as a whole, but just to keep the BRDC going. And so Brian and Dave and Howden invented this scheme whereby we'd look at young drivers, and if they were showing potential, trying to get them to become rising stars, and as they progress through Formula 3, British GTs, touring cars, that they would be a good chance, if they didn't have to worry about the normal form of membership, they would become BRDC members, hence paying out their 500 quid a year to be a member, and it would be self-generating. So each young driver, we had typically a group of 40, and you would either fall out by age at 24 or go on to better things, or you'd run out of money, but it was always trying to be 40 people each year. So in 2003, I think it is, Dave Brodie and I were doing the interviews, and there's two lads we had to interview that day, both to which were starting off, they both come straight from karting, and they were both doing Formula Renault that year, first year for both of them, and they both done reasonably well at karting. Anyway, so the first guy we interview is Lewis Hamilton, and he's got all the criteria. He's already been backed by McLaren, and this is a horrible thing to say, but it's the truth. The biggest decision we had to make was nothing about Lewis's ability. It's because he was black, and the BRDC, a fuddy-duddy old lot, we were thinking more about what is the club going to say, having a black man in, because Lewis was going to be the first, still is. And Dave and I said, well, we'll have to swallow it because we can't turn this bloke down on what he's got ability-wise just because of the colour of his skin. The other guy was called Chaz Small, and this shows you how your life can go. So Chaz was also doing Formula Renault, ran out of money. He's worked at Silverstone for the last 20 years. I've worked with him a lot. So, you know, you turn up to do a day at Silverstone, you're probably going to meet Chaz or have something to do with Chaz. That, you know, Lewis is there, 7 times world champion, and Chaz did another 2 seasons and has never raced since. But on that day, they were equal.
Yeah. And I'm sure Lewis thanked you for that little help on the way he gave you.
All I can remember is what he was wearing. He turned up in a creamy, looked like hand-knitted white polo neck jumper. And I thought, that's a bit weird. but obviously things haven't changed much now.
Yeah, and certainly, well, attitudes have changed, of course, haven't they, to that kind of thing. So you lost count slightly, but you think you raced probably, or at least drove on track, including testing, about 600 different cars.
Yeah.
And you actually took part in 754 races.
I did. Yeah.
And is that it, Fluxie? Are you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm lucky if I can get up the stairs now. So no, I did it for 49 consecutive years. Sadly, I've lost a lot of friends, but 2 which stand out. Ian Taylor, killed at Spa. Lucy's brother, Peter Rogers, killed at Donington. Luckily, I'm here. I've done all those different cars, all that racing. And there's young lads and girls behind you that are queuing up. You know, you don't want to be a cock blocker, do you?
Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Flux.
Thank you. Thank you.
There will be a few questions. So Peter, have you got the mics there? A question, Neil, over in the corner here. Any reminiscences about Fluxie?
Good evening, Ian. How are you, mate?
I'm good now.
Okay.
Nice to see you here.
How long you got? Can I tell all the stories?
Yeah, no. I was only told to quiet down because apparently it's on YouTube and there's 3 million people watching.
Oh, really? So what about all the F words then?
There was hardly any.
The first thing is...
And it's lovely to see Pam.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
Good to see you. So, congratulations for your long career, and I'm sure it's going to continue. We could talk for hours, but first thing is, I've got to say, about time you gave up smoking, mate. Yeah. Because you're not... I always tease them about that.
Yes, you do.
So, I just mentioned Token. You know, we didn't have... only a few of us in the team, and you worked your socks off like we all did, and we seemed to be able to go without sleep. And, yeah, we lost Tom to the Money Men. That car still exists. I don't know if you ever see it at Classic Monaco, but
yeah,
we worked our hearts out for that. But and I never drove with you. Did we have the Volkswagen van then?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, luckily I never drove you in that, but you were always loyal to us.
You might not have run Graham so keenly for me.
One quick question. I read somewhere that you hope to one day persuade Graham to give you a test drive in the embassy when you worked there.
Yeah.
That never happened.
No. I think it was one of those carrots that just kept moving.
Right. And then also to mention, you know, when the plane crash ended the embassy team, really, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, sadly.
And obviously, Tony Bryce was a future world champion. And so you guys must have been destroyed at the closing of the team.
I can't believe how quickly that people want... So Graham was sponsored by Ford, Scania, never mind the cigarette embassy, but all the people who gave us bits, literally within a week of the accident, all wanted their stuff back.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Shane Graham's dead, we'll come and pick those vans up in the morning.
Yeah. And also, just to mention, the workshop that you were in with Embassy, Graham's workshop, was the ex-Rondell shop. When we shut the doors, Graham came in and benefited from all Ron's overspending on our beautiful factory, which took all our money.
Yeah.
That's...
the workshop that Neil and I shared in Walton-on-Thames, it was like a palace when I moved, and that's what Neil was used to. So, Neil had fallen off a cliff when he's got this old tin box.
Well, yeah. But anyway, a great career. It's lovely. Whenever we bump into each other, you know, we reminisce a bit. You haven't changed. You're still a great character. And well done.
Honestly, how it's lovely to see you to get together, because Neil worked every hour that God sent. He can't have seen Pam for weeks and weeks in early '74.
That's true.
They're still together, which is commendable.
I think I slept in the dustbin just before Silverstone. Anyway,
thank you, Neil,
and thank
you for coming.
Great evening.
Thanks. So, any other questions then for Ian? Fluxie?
I know you've had a lot of fun, Fluxie, over the years, but who's the driver you've most enjoyed racing against?
Well, as he's here, Bobby. he was always very, very kind. We never hit that often. Good job Martin Short's not here.
Have a word from Bobby.
Hi. Yes, we had some... I do remember one race at Brands where we were side by side, lap after lap into clearways and outbraking each other, and so it was fantastic race. And I think that, yeah, we pretty much, over all the races we did together, we never touched each other, at least deliberately,
Well, not on the circuit.
Thank you. Any other questions for Fluxie?
I could do with a fag.
One more.
Got one here at the front.
Just one more. In the book, there's a little chapter that Murray Walker actually knew your name when you were, and that was one of your little highlights of the career. Murray to know your name.
It was the Toka shootout in 1992, and I was in the Works Peugeot. And for a change, the Works Peugeots were actually going quite well. And Murray was doing the commentary. It was the first year of the shootout, and got down to 4 of us in the end. It was Cleland and David Leslie, myself, and Gravett. So 2 Peugeots and 2 Vauxhalls. And my gran's listening to this, because it was... and my gran rang my mum. My gran was then in her late 80s, early 90s. And she said, "Oh, Ian's made it. I've just heard Murray talking about him on the telly."
So, any other questions for Fluxie? Before I leave, Ian, we've talked about it several times. It is a great read for Flux sake. Great title. Invented by Tiffany Dell, I think, originally.
It was
his idea
indeed.
Originally, yeah. They are down at the back here, so Fluxie will be very happy to sign and...
take 20 quid off of you.
Take 20 quid off you.
Your cigarette and wee.
Yes. Yeah, I do need a wee and a cigarette first, if people could bear with me for 5 minutes.
Okay, so big hand, please, for Ian Flux. Thank you very much.
Thank you.